What's up, everybody? Tyson Roush, Let's Talk Jets. Hope everybody had an excellent weekend. We have some breaking news as Zach Wilson has been traded to the Denver Broncos, a swap of late round picks. Each team is paying like $2.75 million each. And this should really come as no surprise to you, as anyone with the brain realized at the end of last season that Zach was going to be gone. Once he got banged up and didn't return, you had to figure the Jets and him had an agreement like, listen, we know you need to change the scenery. You know we want you out of here. We're going to make it happen. So this trade is no surprise, and they weren't going to release him. I mean, I think Woody Johnson would try to save the embarrassment of cutting a number 2 pick overall. So he tried to figure out anything possible to get this deal done. So no shock. What's shocking is how a lot of people on social media are sitting here just, happily dunking all over Zach Wilson and being proud of it, where this draft blunder by the Jets set this organization back a couple years. And as bad as Zach was, the way the Jets handled him was pretty much similar, just as bad. And that's the story for me. Like Joe Douglas and company are very lucky they found a way to get Aaron Rodgers, because not too often you can miss out on a number 2 pick. You had the Becton miss, all the other free agent mishaps, a continued amount of losing, and retain your job and can move on and make more decisions. So they're lucky they got Aaron Rodgers, who unfortunately didn't play last year. But the Jets handling a Zach Wilson from day one, where you have a first-time head coach, first-time offensive coordinator, first-time quarterback coach, and no legitimate competition on the roster to compete for the starting job, was your first problem. Now, I understand there was the unfortunate passing of Greg Knapp, but the recipe to start from the beginning was already flawed. So then once training camp starts and the season starts playing out, you realize that the kid is way in over his head and not ready to play, and that's where you have your problem. So you have pretty much that rookie year. Everybody was like a wash year for everybody. Like, we had no expectations. We just want to see growth. We want to see improvement with an eye towards year 2. Year 2 comes, and you see more of the same, to the point where he was being outplayed by Mike White and pretty much everybody else that played the Mike LaFleur offense, Josh Johnson, Joe Flacco, everything else. And then it got to a point where the team quit on him, literally quit on him, and that was it, to the point where the end of last year, they had Zach Wilson inactive. They were scared to even put him on the field. They wanted to go have him do a reset. The end of year 2 is when the Jets should have traded Zach Wilson. It was done then. There was no coming back for the team quitting on him. Then what they do is, not only do they not trade him, they bring him back as the primary backup behind Aaron Rodgers, which to me, if you go back through all this little history here, we talked about over and over and over. Zach Wilson is done in New York. He should not be here. They assumed arrogantly that Aaron Rodgers would never get hurt. Lo and behold, he does get hurt, and the Jets tripled down their mistake and left him in there painfully as another season fell apart. And then towards the end, they bring in Trevor Siemian to try to save the day, which was completely ludicrous. So the Jets are by far not, like, they got to get a lot of blame for this. Like, listen, I'll go into the whole Zach thing, but this is one of the biggest busts in NFL history, one of the biggest busts in team history, and that's on Douglas, and that's on Saga, the way they handled it. It's just at some point you got to cut your losses and recognize, listen, we drafted this kid. We thought he was A. He's actually C. What do we do now? But their arrogance to keep pushing him out there, watching him fail, watch loss after loss, and have yourself in a situation where you're desperate that you got to beg the Packers to trade you Aaron Rodgers. And now the Jets are potentially a year away from being in the same exact boat where they have no quarterback, which is scary. But so from the Jets' perspective, a complete disaster. Then from Zach's perspective, I think he was just so far in over his head and overwhelmed that he didn't know how to get out of his own way. In the first year, they brought his own personal quarterback coach in, and it got to the point where a success for him was just being a basic game manager. Throw for 110 yards and stay out of the way. And that's how low the standards became. And when he started doing that, everybody was celebrating it. So from him, and then, throughout, he had a lack of accountability. After the one Patriot game, he didn't take any blame for it. He's like, the defensive players pretty much had a ride at that point. You just saw the same mistakes, the same lack of situational awareness, lack of game awareness, the turnovers. This year, you saw a little bit of improvement, but he had so much further to go, because you saw guys all across the NFL for a lot less experience doing more. You saw journeyman guys coming in, making plays. Like, everybody figured out a way to make plays in the NFL, and Zach just continued to struggle for a variety of reasons, whether it was fundamentals, whether it was confidence, which was mental, whatever it was. The whole experience in New York just wasn't going to work for him. So he was the wrong player at the wrong time with the wrong organization. So now he goes to Denver with Sean Payton and maybe resurrects his career a little bit. And I don't have any animosity or hatred towards him. I mean, if he saves himself and becomes a legit, backup quarterback or a lower level starting quarterback, good for him. It's just the time had come, and that should have been last year. So the Jets got this deal done. Wonderful. This to me is a non-story because the biggest story this year is with the play of Aaron Rodgers and the play of this offense, and can this team win the AFC East? But I know this is going to be headlines for a day or two, so we got to comment on it. And that's it. So Zach Wilson experience is finally over. Thank goodness. I genuinely don't want to say his name ever again.